The compound smelled of firewood and wet soil after the morning rain. Somewhere behind the house, a hen clucked anxiously as her chicks scattered across the yard. Inside the old, fading bungalow, a girl named Amarachi scrubbed the floor with a torn rag. Her knees were bruised, her fingers wrinkled from the soapy water, but she didn't stop. Not because she wanted to, but because her aunt's voice still echoed in her head, sharp and cold. "Make sure that floor shines before I come back." That was Aunt Neka. Her late brother's widow had taken Amarachi in after her parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Everyone in the village had praised her for her kindness, calling her a good woman for accepting to raise her niece. But inside that house, kindness was a word that never lived. Amarachi was 12 when she moved in, and from the very first day, she became the housemaid. She cooked, fetched water, washed clothes, and even farmed. Aunt Neka's own children, Obiora and Chinaza, never lifted a finger. They wore clean uniforms, ate meat every day, and laughed whenever their mother mocked Amarachi. "See her knees," Chinaza once said, giggling. "Maybe when she finishes scrubbing, the floor will pity her and shine her face too." The words stung, but Amarachi had learned to swallow her pain like medicine. She just smiled faintly and said nothing. Her only comfort came from an old photo she kept hidden under her pillow. Her parents, standing side by side, smiling as if nothing bad could ever touch them. Each night before sleeping, she whispered to them, "Papa, Mama, I'm trying to be strong. I will make you proud one day." Days turned into months. Aunt Neka's wickedness deepened. She would count the spoons after every meal, check how much Gary was left, and shout if anything seemed missing. Amarachi could go the whole day with just water and a little cassava bread. Still, she didn't stop working. One afternoon, the rain came down heavy. Amarachi had been sent to the stream to fetch water, even though thunder had begun to roll. She carried 2 big yellow jerrycans, her small hands shaking under the weight. On her way back, she slipped on the wet path, and the containers fell, spilling the water she had struggled to fetch. Her heart raced. She knew what awaited her. By the time she got home drenched and trembling, Aunt Neka was already standing outside with her arms folded. "So you wasted my time and my water," she barked. "Did you go there to swim or to fetch?" "I'm sorry, Auntie," Amarachi said, voice breaking. The ground was slippery. A hard slap cut her words short. The sting spread through her cheek like fire. Neka didn't stop there. She grabbed a broom and beat the girl until she fell. Obiora watched from the window, smiling like it was a show made for him alone. That night, Amarachi sat outside, the moonlight touching her swollen face. She couldn't sleep. The pain wasn't just on her skin, it had entered her bones. She wondered if this was how life would always be, endless suffering, no kindness, no hope. But fate never sleeps. It was already preparing something Neka could never imagine. One evening, about a month later, a strange visitor arrived at the house. A man in a neat shirt and glasses, driving a dark blue car that none of them had ever seen before. He asked for Amarachi. "She's busy," Neka replied quickly, blocking the doorway. "What do you want with her?" The man smiled gently. "I'm from her father's company," he said. Before he died, he invested in a land project. We've been trying to locate his next of kin for years. The government finally released the funds. Neka froze. "Funds? What kind of funds?" "Millions of naira," the man said casually. "We need Amarachi to sign for it." For the first time, Neka's mouth went dry. She turned slowly to look at the girl standing behind her, still holding a rag and looking confused. Everything around them suddenly felt quiet, even the chickens stopped scratching. Amarachi's eyes met the man's. He smiled kindly. "You'll be fine now, my dear." And just like that, something shifted in the air. Neka laughed awkwardly. "Oh, she's my daughter," she said quickly. "We've been waiting for this. Please, come in." But the man looked at her sharply. "Her daughter?" "No, Ma. I have the documents." You're her aunt, not her mother. Neka's smile faded. Amarachi stood still, her heart pounding. She didn't understand everything, but she knew something big was happening, something that would change everything. That night, after the man left with the promise to return the next day, Neka couldn't sleep. She kept pacing, thinking, sweating. She knew greed too well, and she wasn't about to let the girl she had maltreated become rich under her nose. She started plotting, whispering to herself in the dark. But what she didn't know was that life had already turned its wheel. Tables were shifting quietly, and the same hands that once slapped Amarachi would soon beg her for mercy. That was only the beginning of what would become the greatest twist her small world had ever seen. Morning came with the smell of fried plantain and the sound of a cock crowing somewhere behind the house. The sun had barely risen, and the village was still quiet except for the distant chatter of schoolchildren on the main road. Amarachi was awake before everyone else, as usual. She had finished sweeping the compound and was now washing clothes by the well when Aunt Neka's voice pierced through the still air. Amarachi, you're still washing. Do you think you're the only one in this house? Amarachi dropped the shirt she was rinsing and quickly ran inside. Her fingers were already wrinkled from soap water, and her eyes were red from lack of sleep. Neka sat in the sitting room, wrapped in a wrapper and holding her phone. Her face looked puffy, as though she had been awake all night. She couldn't stop thinking about what the man had said the day before, millions of naira. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amarachi's face, the same girl she had been calling worthless now standing on a mountain of wealth. The thought alone was enough to sour her mood. Make hot tea for me, Neka ordered. And fry more plantain. The one you did earlier was too soft. Amarachi nodded quickly and hurried to the kitchen. The smell of kerosene filled the air as she lit the stove. While waiting for the oil to heat, she remembered the man's face, calm, polite, with eyes that carried warmth she had not felt in years. He had said he would return today. She didn't understand what kind of money he was talking about, but she could tell it was something huge. Deep inside, a small spark of hope began to grow. By afternoon, the man's car pulled up again, its tires crunching the gravel. Amarachi's heart jumped. She was in the backyard, hanging clothes, when she heard his voice calling her name. She wiped her hands and rushed to the front yard. Neka came out too, this time wearing a different wrapper and a forced smile. Ah, my brother, welcome. I've been expecting you. Please, come inside. The man didn't smile. Good afternoon, Ma. I'll prefer to speak with Amarachi directly today. Neka's smile stiffened. Ah, no problem, she said quickly, her voice trembling slightly. Let me bring her for you. She turned and called, Amarachi. Come here, my dear. Amarachi came slowly, unsure how to stand or what to say. The man nodded at her. Your father's documents are ready, he explained kindly. I'll take you to the city tomorrow to complete the signing. You'll need a guardian present. But we have to make sure your guardian is someone legally recognized. Neka's eyes darted. Of course I'm her guardian, she interrupted, laughing nervously. I raised her. I'm her only family. The man opened his briefcase, took out a brown envelope, and handed it to Amarachi. Keep this, he said. It's part of your father's property certificate. You'll need it tomorrow. Amarachi took the envelope with shaky hands, her heart pounding. She had never held anything that felt so important. After he left, Neka's face changed. Her fake smile disappeared, replaced with something dark and sharp. So you think you can now walk around this house like a queen because one man came here with stories? Amarachi shook her head quickly. No, Auntie. I didn't. A hard slap cut her off. The envelope flew out of her hand and landed on the floor. Kneel down. Neka shouted. You think I don't know your plan? You want to collect money and forget the person who fed you all these years. Tears filled Amarachi's eyes, but she kept quiet. She picked up the envelope carefully and held it close to her chest. Neka's anger burned through the room. She stood over the girl, pointing a trembling finger. "If you dare follow that man tomorrow without me, I'll show you the real meaning of madness." That night, Amarachi couldn't sleep. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, her mind filled with fear and hope tangled together. She didn't know what to believe or who to trust. But one thing she knew for sure, she couldn't stay in that house any longer. Meanwhile, in the next room, Neka was pacing again. She had already made up her mind. She would go with Amarachi to the city, by any means. She would make sure the money came to her, not that ungrateful orphan. The next morning came too soon. Amarachi barely had time to brush her teeth before Neka dragged her out of bed. "Hurry up," she said. "That man might be waiting." When they got outside, the car was already there. The man stood beside it, looking calm as always. "Good morning," he greeted. "Are you ready?" Amarachi nodded slowly. Neka forced a smile. "I'll be coming with her," she said quickly. The man looked at her, hesitated, then sighed. "All right, but you'll need to bring some documents for verification." The journey to the city was long. Amarachi sat quietly at the back, staring out the window as the green fields and market stalls passed by. Neka, sitting beside the man, kept trying to talk, asking questions about the money, about the property, about the process. He answered politely but briefly, giving nothing away. When they arrived at the office, the air inside was cool and everything looked shiny and clean, a world far from what Amarachi knew. They were led to a small room with a desk and 2 chairs. A woman came in with a file and smiled warmly at Amarachi. "You must be Amarachi," she said. "Your father was a good man. He left a lot behind for you." Neka straightened in her seat. "Yes, we know. We just need to finish everything quickly." The woman ignored her tone. "We only need Amarachi's signature," she said. "And we already confirmed her as the rightful heir." Neka blinked. "What do you mean confirmed?" The woman looked at her. "We verified with the local council. You're not her legal guardian. Her father's will clearly states that her guardianship was assigned to a family trustee." The color drained from Neka's face. "That can't be," she said, raising her voice. "I'm the one who took care of her. She's mine." The man stood up calmly. "Ma, please lower your voice. Everything is legal and documented. The funds will go directly to Amarachi's trust account. You have no authority here." Amarachi sat frozen. She could barely breathe. She looked at Neka, whose eyes were wide with disbelief. For the first time, the mighty woman looked small, cornered, powerless. "You can't do this," Neka muttered, clutching her wrapper. "You can't leave me with nothing." Amarachi swallowed hard. "Auntie," she said quietly, "you have everything you need. You have your children, your house. I only have this chance." Neka's lips trembled. She wanted to shout again, but her voice failed her. She stood there for a long time before turning and walking out of the room, her feet heavy like stones. When Amarachi stepped outside an hour later, the sky looked brighter than she had ever seen it. The man handed her a small folder and said, "Your life begins now, Amarachi. Use it wisely." She thanked him with tears in her eyes. As the car took her back home, she sat quietly, the folder on her lap, thinking of all the nights she had cried in silence. The world felt new, open, full of possibilities. But she also knew her aunt was not the kind of woman to give up easily. Something in her gut told her the storm wasn't over yet. Back in the village, Neka sat on the veranda, her eyes red, her mind spinning. Everyone would soon hear what had happened, that the girl she called useless was now richer than all of them. And that, she could not allow. As she sat there, staring into the distance, a dangerous thought began to grow inside her. Amarachi's success had become her new enemy, and she was ready to fight it in ways Amarachi could never see coming. 3 weeks had passed since Amarachi's life changed, but peace still felt like a stranger. The money had not yet been released directly into her hands, The company had placed it in a trust, with her name as the sole beneficiary, to be accessed when she turned 18. Still, everything had shifted. The same villagers who once looked away when she carried buckets of water now greeted her with smiles. Mothers who used to call her that poor girl from Neka's house now stopped to ask, "Amarachi, my daughter, how are you today?" But inside Aunt Neka's compound, nothing was the same. The woman who once ruled the household with her voice now sat quietly most days, lost in thought. Her eyes looked tired, her laughter forced. Even her own children could feel it. Chinaza noticed how her mother's mood darkened every time Amarachi returned from the company's office. That afternoon, Amarachi came home with a new bag of provisions, something she had never done before. It wasn't from the trust fund but from the welfare package the company had offered her to support her schooling. She placed the items carefully on the table: rice, beans, oil, salt, even sugar, things the house had lacked for weeks. "Auntie," she said gently, "I brought these for the house. So we can all eat well." Neka looked up slowly. Her lips twitched as if she wanted to say thank you, but the words refused to leave her mouth. Her pride was choking her. All her life, she had believed money gave her power, and now the same girl she once fed crumbs was the one bringing food to her table. "You brought all these?" she finally asked, her voice cold. "Yes, Auntie." Neka forced a small laugh. "So you think you're now the provider? You think you're a woman because of small money?" Amarachi lowered her gaze. "No, Auntie. I just wanted to help." "Help me?" Neka snapped. "You want to help me in my own house? God forbid." The words struck like a slap, but Amarachi said nothing. She quietly packed the food items back into the bag and turned toward her room. Her throat burned with unshed tears. Behind her, Chinaza muttered, "Mama, it's just food now. Keep quiet." Neka barked. "Do you know what pride can do to a child? That girl thinks she's better than us because of one man's paper." That night, as the crickets sang outside, Amarachi sat on her bed, the small lantern beside her flickering. She opened her father's photo again, running her finger across his smile. "Papa, I'm trying," she whispered. "But why does she hate me this much?" Outside, Neka was sitting in the dark, whispering to her friend Chizoba, who had stopped by after hearing rumors of Amarachi's sudden fortune. "That girl is too lucky," Chizoba said, shaking her head. "If she was my niece, I would make sure she knows her place." Neka sighed heavily. "I raised her. I clothed her. I did everything. Now she walks around as if she's the queen of the world. It's not fair." Chizoba leaned closer. "You still have time to act. Don't let her use you and dump you. That money can still pass through your hands if you play your cards well." "How?" Neka asked, her eyes narrowing. "Simple. She's still a minor. You can make her sign some papers, say it's for her schooling, and use the money for family needs. Once the account starts rolling, no one will question you." Neka's heart began to race. The plan sounded wicked, but her greed was louder than her conscience. "Are you sure it will work?" Chizoba smiled. "Leave it to me. I know someone who can make the papers look real." The next day, Neka's behavior changed completely. She woke Amarachi up with a soft voice and even offered her tea. "My daughter," she said sweetly, "you've been through a lot. I know I've been hard on you. It was all out of love. I just want us to be one happy family again." Amarachi looked at her suspiciously but nodded slowly. "Yes, Auntie." Neka smiled wider. "Good. I spoke to someone who said you can use part of your father's money to pay for a better school in town. All I need is your signature on some forms so I can handle everything for you." Amarachi hesitated. Something about the sudden kindness didn't sit right. "But Auntie, the man from the company said no one should sign for me unless he's there." Neka's face stiffened for a moment, then she laughed softly. "My dear, do you think I'll harm you? I've been the one taking care of you since your parents died. You can trust me." Amarachi smiled weakly but didn't reply. Later that evening, she sneaked to the small office in the company where the kind man worked and told him everything. He listened quietly, his brow furrowed. "You did well to tell me," he said. "You must not sign anything she gives you. There are people who would do anything for money. We'll protect you." The following morning, Neka brought the documents, wrapped neatly in a brown envelope. "Sign here, my dear," she said sweetly, handing Amarachi a pen. Before Amarachi could respond, a knock came on the door. It was the same man from the company, this time accompanied by 2 police officers. Neka's smile disappeared instantly. "What is going on?" she asked. The officer stepped forward. "Madam Neka, you are under investigation for attempting to forge legal documents related to your niece's inheritance." The entire house went silent. Chinaza gasped. Obiora stood frozen. Neka's hands began to shake. No, it's a mistake. I was only helping her. I didn't mean." "You can explain that at the station," the officer said firmly. Amarachi stood still, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe what was happening. She had never wanted this, not to see her aunt humiliated, not to bring police into their home. But the truth had finally come to light. As they led Neka away, she turned to Amarachi with eyes full of tears and anger. "So this is how you repay me? After everything I did for you?" Amarachi felt her chest tighten. "Auntie, I didn't do this to hurt you. You did it to yourself." For a long time, the only sound was the fading hum of the police car as it disappeared down the road. The compound fell into heavy silence. Chinaza broke down crying, clutching her mother's wrapper that had fallen on the ground. Later that evening, Amarachi sat alone under the mango tree near the well. For the first time, the house felt calm. No shouting, no insults, just quiet air. She could finally breathe. But even in that peace, her heart felt heavy. She remembered all the times Neka had scolded her, all the hunger, the pain, yet somewhere inside her, there was pity. That woman had been consumed by greed so deeply she couldn't see love anymore. A few days later, the village was buzzing with the story. Some people said Amarachi had used charm to bring her aunt down. Others said it was justice. But no one knew the truth better than Amarachi herself, that karma had simply come home. Weeks passed. Neka was released after paying a fine and signing a legal restraint to stay away from Amarachi's funds. When she returned to the village, her pride was gone. Her neighbors whispered whenever she passed, and her once loud voice had turned soft and weary. One morning, she sent for Amarachi. The girl hesitated but went. Neka was sitting quietly in her backyard, her eyes sunken, her hands shaking slightly. "Amarachi," she began, her voice low, "I know you don't owe me anything. I did wicked things to you, and life has shown me my shame. But I just want to say, I'm sorry." Amarachi's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak for a while. When she finally did, her voice trembled. "Auntie, I forgave you a long time ago. I just wanted peace." Neka nodded slowly, tears sliding down her face. "You're a better person than I was," she whispered. "I hope life treats you kindly." That day, Amarachi walked away from the compound for the last time. She didn't look back. The world before her was wide and waiting, full of promise and new beginnings. Years later, she would become one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the region, known for her kindness and generosity. She built a foundation for orphaned children and named it the Neka Home of Hope, not out of spite, but to remind the world that even pain can give birth to purpose. And when people asked her what inspired her journey, she would smile and say, "Sometimes, the same hand that pushes you down is the one that teaches you how to rise." Because, in the end, the wicked aunt who once thought she could control fate learned the hardest lesson of all. Tables always turn, and when they do, no one escapes the weight of their own deeds. And that's how the story of the wicked aunt who forgot that tables turn came to an unforgettable end. Amarachi's journey reminds us that no matter how long wickedness lasts, truth and goodness always find their way to victory. What goes around truly comes around, and when life decides to turn the table, it does so without warning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, drop a comment, and tell us which country you're watching from and what the time says where you are. Your support keeps these powerful stories coming your way. See you in the next one.